right, here we are. Interview Friday. So glad to be here. I have a very special guest today. He is a master clown and an actor, and his name is Joel Jeske. And I'm really looking forward to this. It's also my birthday. What do you know? Happy birthday to me. Let's get into it. It's Lunch Therapy, Interview Friday. My interview is Joel Jeske. First, here's a subscriber update. So we're working on getting 550 by Sunday, and it looks like we have 532. Pretty good. We're moving along. Of course, the ultimate goal is 1,000 subscribers. You'll see down below, there's some of the new subscribers. That's not all of them, but it's the ones that I could figure out. Like Kamala Lopez is here. Happy birthday. Thank you very much. Mark Strignell, musician from London. You guys are in for a treat today because we've got somebody that is just really fantastic. So let's jump in. All right. Well, that wasn't very dramatic, but here's Joel. I was going to bring him on, but I just, there he is. Joel Jeske from his home in New York City. New York City?
Yes, I believe so.
New York City. He believes so. He has
yep,
to look
New York City.
Behind
Manhattan,
us, Manhattan. He's in Manhattan, straight from Manhattan, and hopefully he won't have to make any pizzas. Like yesterday, my guest Joe Menente had to make a pizza in the middle of the show. I won't even go into it, but it was quite an extravaganza. Let's see who's out there. Kevin Sherman is out there. Kevin Sherman is the one who introduced me to Joel. Can't wait for the interview. Joel Jeske is a genius.
What a dashing picture.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Okay.
He's looking sharp
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
This is my cousin John Marshall. Happy birthday. Thanks, John. Great to see you. Todd Lee, happy birthday, Joel. Getting old couldn't happen to a better fella. It happens. It does. It happens. Not yet, though. Not to the old yet, right? Kevin Sherman says, and yeah, happy birthday. All right, so we're going to breathe, and then we're going to get to the interview. Behind me is Todd Lee's dog, Georgie. And this is up at the Moose Lodge. And yeah, that's what's happening at the Moose Lodge. Can you believe it? It's snowing. Yeah, it's snowing. This is a live feed. Well, it's not really a live feed, but it's as close as we can get to a live feed of Georgie sleeping. Trish, thank you very much. Trish is this wonderful musician. She's up in Maine. And she does a live stream as well of her music, so check it out. Oh, that's another thing I just want to plug. Tonight at 8 p.m., I'm doing a comedy show in New York City, if you can believe it. Remotely from Los Angeles. It's my first New York stand-up comedy show, and it is at the American Comedy Institute. And you can go to the live show at 5 p.m. Pacific or 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Just go to my website, joelmarshall.com, and there will be a link. There you have it. So it's time to breathe now. So what we do, Joel, is we take 3 deep breaths, and we like to say in through the nose, out through the toes. So in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it and let it go. It's 8 p.m. in London, so I'd better hurry. I don't know what time the show is in London, probably the middle of the night. Kelly Spees-Williams, good to see you all the way from Texas. We got a crowd here today. All right, in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it out. They say breathing is good for you, and I believe them. One more breath and let's get into this thing. So in through the nose, out through the toes. Holding it. All right, let it go. We're going to say goodbye to Georgie for now. And now I'm going to have a very dramatic intro for Interview Friday Live. That was pretty intense. That was. Yeah, it sets us up for some real aggressive interview style, I think.
It's a lot of anticipation in that opening. A lot of anticipation. Ooh,
we have Lauren Ackerman's here. Holy, happy birthday. So this is the first live interview we've ever done on the show. We normally do it kind of pre-taped. So if anybody has questions as we go along, you can chat and put them on the screen. Try not to distract us too much with your non sequiturs. Nice hummingbird, yeah. Okay, so Joel is a professional clown. He has been nominated for 3 Drama Desk Awards. So he's the kind of clown that has performed in circuses and also on the stage. And he's also an improv artist and an actor. Thank you for being here on the show, Joel. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right. So we've been talking about clowns on the show for the last couple of weeks. We had Vernis Clear last week, who also was a graduate of the Clown College, the Ringling Brothers Clown College, as you were. And one of the things that last night I was actually in an acting cold reading workshop, and it was a comedy thing. And I said, hey, I'm interviewing Joel Jeske tomorrow. He's a master clown. And they were like, what is that? They didn't even know. And the guy who was running the workshop was like, Matt, the clowning is an art. And they were like, oh, it is? It's an art form? So I wanted to present this to you. Did you ever see yourself as being a clown, or how did you get the idea even to be a clown?
Well, it's always you always have that moment of inspiration very early on. And to really put it out there, it was 2 things. First of all, finding out when I was roughly 12 years old that there was a place where you could learn to be a clown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Ringling Brothers was promoting Clown College. This was the late 70s. And it was promoting Clown College. And it was come, audition, be a student, learn how to be a circus clown. Because in the 70s, all those circus arts, juggling and acrobatics and clowning and all that type of stuff, still was really untouchable. It seemed magic because nobody was out there teaching it to the masses. Mm-hmm. Juggling had not gotten hip yet.
Also, our idea was that you run off with the circus.
Yes.
You're the circus is in town, and that's how you run off and go join the circus, and that's how you become a clown.
Yeah, not what a southern couple does.
Yeah.
So, but to be honest, there I am. I'm back.
Yeah.
So, I saw this guy who I met later on in my career. His name was Charlie Fry, and he was a clown, and he had done one trick, and this one trick really inspired me.
And what was that?
And he took, first of all, he was kind of a tramp clown, and he took a broom and he bounced it on his forehead.
Yeah.
But before he did that, he put his vest over the bristles and his hat bounced on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he sat there balancing the broom there, and then he kicked it back and he put his arms up in the air, and the vest dropped perfectly onto him.
No way.
His hat landed on his head. The broom ended up behind his back, and then he revealed the broom and did this really just ta-da kind of style.
Wow.
And at 12, that blew me away.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to do that.
I got that. I had that same experience as an actor when I first saw A Christmas Carol. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and the ghost of Jacob Marley came out from under the floor, and he was covered in chains, and he was glowing. And he said, "These are the chains that I forged in life." And that was that moment. I was like, I got to do that. Whatever that
I
is.
gotta do that.
I gotta do that. I don't care what it costs.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
And the thing is, I really didn't kind of embrace being a clown until I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
Because I kind of did the whole like what my parents expected of me kind of thing. So like when I went to college, I was like, I know I'll go into broadcasting, I'll go into comedy writing, I'll go into improvisation, things like that. So I can still get like that, what we call get the ha-has out. So
Yeah.
I was like kind of getting the laughs out, but at the same time doing something that people in Northern Illinois would still relatively respect.
And at some point you abandoned all of that. You said, I just want to get my ha-has out.
Yeah, well, and it was the thing. It was the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah.
There was the audition for Clown College, and it was right. Strangely enough, it was right after I'd gotten involved in the improv community and all this type of stuff, and I had this certain sense of confidence and hubris.
Yeah.
And the audition was out at the Rosemont Horizon, which is a stadium outside of Chicago, but I had no way of getting there.
Mm-hmm.
So literally getting there was like my own Buster Keaton movie. I had to take a cab to a bus to a train to another cab and tried to hitch a ride. And then I was walking along the highway for about 30 minutes. And I literally was climbing over the separation wall and walking the entire distance of the arena parking lot before I got there. And that year for Clown College, 96, they auditioned 5 times in Chicago. And 900 people were at the last audition.
900 people at the last audition.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I found out later.
How did they even separate you out? What did you find out?
Well, later? I mean, they had a bit of a. They would break you up, but first thing you had to do was you had to introduce yourself, and then you had to say why you wanted to be a clown. And to be honest, that really kind of separated the sheep from the goats.
And what did you say?
I just basically said, hello, my name is Joel Jeske. I wanted to be a clown since I was 12 years old. Please let me be a clown. And then I just turned and walked away.
And who are your inspirations that you want to be a clown besides the one that you saw? I mean, was it like Buster Keaton or something, or where were you seeing these kind of people?
Yeah, it was like, because I was already part of the improv and comedy community.
Yeah.
All the people I hung out with in Chicago were all into physical comedy. We were all in Laurel and Hardy and W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers. And at the same time, Mr. Bean really hadn't hit yet.
Mm-hmm. Love Mr. Bean.
So, we still had, Rowan Atkinson and all what he ultimately ended up doing. So we really had to look a lot towards, a lot towards the classic comedians and a lot of classic films and Dick Van Dyke and stuff like that. But at the same time too, I had this a real interest in clowning in Europe and clowning in Russia. Mm-hmm. And how, clowning. Yes, of course, JP Patches.
Do you know
somebody
JP
from
Patches?
Detroit.
Seattle.
Patches.
He's from Seattle.
Oh, Seattle. Okay,
yeah.
no.
We grew up in Seattle, so I talk about JP. What's the one in Chicago, in Detroit?
He was a guy named Irv Roaming. He was another Patches the Clown, too.
I wondered if you knew who JP Patches was, because for us, that was like the clown for us.
Yeah.
He was the dude.
Well, my clown growing up was Bozo.
Bozo, right.
Bozo Circus in WGN. It had a 10-year waiting list to go see Bozo to go see Bozo live.
No way.
The gag is that people, when they were getting engaged, their relatives they would plan children, and their relatives would say, "Tell us when you want to go," because they would have to get the tickets 10 years in advance.
Oh my God! Apparently that was
and
kind of franchised.
Wanted to take like a teenager to Bozo,
Yeah. Of course, it took me this long. I'm 50 years old, and I finally got to Bozo.
And I finally made it.
Finally. So Kevin Sherman is the one who introduced me to you, and I had heard about the show that you did together. Where did you guys meet?
Kevin and I met at the Improv Olympic, and the reason why. When people talk about improv, the reason why people say that the Improv Olympic was so important was it was basically grounded on the teachings of this guy named Del Close.
Mm-hmm.
And Del Close was the inventor, I guess if you want to call it, of long form improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas most improv was like, give us a bunch of suggestions and we'll do a whole bunch of little scenes, he was like, we're going to do one suggestion
mm-hmm.
and we're going to perform for anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half.
So like a lot of the like Saturday Night Live people and people like that, and Second City.
Right now, like the people who are the A-list comedians, everyone from Stephen Colbert and Steve Carell and Mike Myers and all these types of people that are Amy Poehler and Tina Fey. I mean, all these people who are like the big A-listers now, all were taught and influenced by Del Close. He was an incredible inspiration and at the same time, just one crazy guru.
Yeah.
And, so you went to the Improv Olympic to be taught by him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately where I met Kevin, and I met a guy named Bruce Green, and I met a guy named Dave Schmidt, and that's where that first clown show came out of.
So tell me about that. That was called Clown with a K, Prick Us Till We Burst, right?
Yeah, prick us and we'll burst.
And we'll burst.
And the idea was, because, I was doing the improv thing, still had like this major desire in the back of my mind to be a clown, and so we were sitting at a independent theater gala in Chicago, in Bucktown, and all these people were performing their hearts out and doing all their art and all this type of stuff, and nobody was paying attention. And I turned to my brother and I said, if the whole point of clowning is to pay attention to the people who are paying attention to you.
To pay attention to the people who are paying attention to you.
Yeah. So instead of an actor who sits there and goes, look at me, look at me, look at me, a clown is basically saying, I'm looking at you.
Mm. Okay.
And so as a stand-up, you could probably understand it. It's a completely different relationship with the audience.
Yeah.
It's very present. It's very there. It's very alive.
No fourth wall between you and the audience.
If you like what people got the sense when they came to Kevin and Mine's clown show, they got the sense that they were locked in the room with 4 clowns and we weren't going to let them out for an hour and 15 minutes. And so it was that kind of power. It was like the show had a tremendous amount of power. And I sat there and it was more about, in the one instance, how do you re-empower performers? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you allow them to stand on stage and demand that attention that they deserve? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, how can you intellectually, emotionally engage them? So in our show, there was a lot of status play. There was a very strict caste system as to what clown was higher than what other clown. And a lot of the relationships were based on like the classic, trio of like the classic circus trio from Europe and the classic, straight man comic. So, I mean, if you look at the picture here, you can tell. So
is that you in the back, in the middle, top?
I'm the guy with the banjo.
Oh, you're the guy with the banjo.
Yeah. And then Kevin is the guy with the trombone on the bottom.
Yeah. And
then the guy in the white face up in the middle, that was Dave Schmidt, Otto Schmidt. So he was the number 1. Uh-huh. Then the guy with the saxophone, that's Bruce Green. He was the number 2.
Yeah.
He was second in command. Uh-huh. And then I was third in command, and then Kevin was on the bottom. And Kevin was basically a step above a gorilla. And Dave at the top, as you can tell, was so refined. Mm-hmm. He was the only one who spoke English, and he spoke directly to the audience because we had convinced everybody that we were German.
Yeah, so that was the thing, is you convinced everybody in Chicago that you were German, and apparently some people believed it, right? Like a lot of people. You were a German clown troupe.
And we did that because it was like, you wanted to play into kind of the pretension of what people in Chicago wanted out of their theater.
Yeah.
If we just said we're a bunch of chuckleheads putting on a clown show, come and see us, nobody would have seen it. They'd be like, who are you? We don't care.
Yeah.
But say that a stranded German clown performance troupe that has been kicked out of New York City and cannot get back home and is doing a show to try to raise money to return to Germany.
I love it. It's very
and they're going to do a best of all their material from a over 30-year
span
theatrical history. Yeah, people are going to show up and see.
I wanted to ask you about this. Do clowns generally speak, or are they generally silent, or are there rules there?
Well, it really depends on where you are.
Yeah.
In the sense of like a show the size of Ringling, you can't speak. No one will hear you. So clowns on Ringling spend a lot of time doing very broad pantomime, and then they use sound effects in the band to kind of bolster up their act. So they're the biggest, almost cartoon quality, because they got to play it big in order to be seen in an arena.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, single ring clowning, like the classic modern circus that you see in Europe and more often in America now, you can speak. And so there is this, what's called the classic 25 entrees that all European circus clowns know. And they're literally like vaudeville sketches. They have jokes. I mean, there's physical comedy in them and things like this. There's acrobatic interludes. There's music. I mean, it's just literally show every skill the clown
And it's
has.
a tradition of sketches?
Well, yeah, it's sketches, but they have been created specifically in the circus.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that a lot of burlesque artists and a lot of vaudevillians who, basically took a lot of those premises.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our classic vaudeville and burlesque sketches, you'll sit there and go, wait a minute, I know this. And suddenly you see two clowns in France going, oh, that's the two cigarettes sketch. And it's like, oh, but wait a minute, I saw that. And, I saw so-and-so do that in vaudeville in America. So a lot of the premises are very much the same. And then at the same time, due to the international quality of clowning, some clowns use gibberish.
I've noticed that some of them are just like, or they make this weird sound. that Russian clown that I was watching on the American Theater Wing did a film that you were in that we should check out. But where they had the Russian clown who does that winter show, I think it was called, where all the snow blasts out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was speaking in gibberish, I believe.
Yeah, that's a Russian tradition of like they literally, like, that's because they do that because at the time when Russia was the USSR, it all comes down to a question of language. How do you make yourself known? How do you make yourself understood? So when I go and I perform internationally, about 90% of the time, I'm doing it non-verbally. Mm-hmm. Unless specifically they say, "Oh, don't worry about it." They understand English, or like when I was over in Germany, I was there long enough to get a couple of phrases in there that at least would keep their attention. Like, "Oh, this guy can communicate with us." But it really depends on what clown tradition you come from. Because I noticed somebody in the thing mentioned Jacques Tati. Mm-hmm. Jacques Tati made these beautiful, all physical comedy movies where the talking was inconsequential.
Mm-hmm. That's probably why during silent films, the clowns were so important. There were so many clowns, and
at the same time too, it's that kind of idea of expressing yourself with your entire body is a bit of a lost art, especially with, with a lot of the, here's a question.
I love it.
Have I performed with Cirque du Soleil? Yes, I have.
Tell us about it.
I was hired to be the understudy for the lead clown in probably one of the worst shows Cirque du Soleil ever put together.
And what was that
And it
show?
was called Banana Spiel. And it was Cirque du Soleil's attempt to do vaudeville. They wanted to put a show that was going to tour the regional theater circuit in America. And everybody wanted this show dead. Like, I mean, literally, people in the press, when it played Montreal, when it played Chicago, when it played New York, when it played Toronto, nobody wanted Banana Spiel to live. And I was hired to understudy the main clown, who was a Broadway actor they had hired. And as they were continuing to develop the show, and the thing about the Broadway actor was he would say, I don't create, you tell me what to do.
Oh, no.
So they would take me, we were at the Beacon Theater in New York, they would take me to like one of the rehearsal rooms in the sub-basement every morning, starting at 10 o'clock. They would give me a bunch of the scenes from the show, and they would say, all right, we just want you to do these scenes any way you want to. Make it too big, make it too small, make it too silly, make it too physical. Just do it. Make us laugh. So I would be there in this sub-basement going through these scenes, and then an assistant stage manager would write down everything that I did. And then that afternoon, starting at 2 o'clock, they would say, all right, so during rehearsal, they'd be like, okay, this is what we'd like you to do. So I was literally developing the character that the guy was doing in the show. You're like a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
So I was like the Phantom of the Opera. I was in like the bowels of the theater. Yes, I was a ghost clowner creating this role. And the best part about it was that there were about 7 other clowns in the show, and all doing various roles. And they had all found out that I was downstairs running these scenes. And, you know, they were performing the show and running, and it was like they didn't get a real chance to mess around and like play with it and find new stuff. Because when you set something in Cirque du Soleil, it gets set in stone, and they don't like to and they don't like to change it.
I bet, because there's also a lot of danger going on in the Cirque du Soleil.
Oh yeah, there's technical. I mean, just the technical side of it is incredible. Yeah. So they would all show up in the morning to kind of get their clown rocks off, as it were.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of mix it up with me.
Yeah.
And then if they found something new, they would then use it in the rehearsal and then use it in the show that night.
Wow. I do want to ask you one thing about clowns and what their purpose is in the circus.
Oh, okay. Well, let me see. I'll start with the realistic.
Yeah.
And end up with the romantic.
Okay.
So realistically,
like, is this stuff written down, or is this just something that is passed on from clown to clown? It just kind of seeps into you like osmosis. Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
So the whole point of a clown in the circus, is to cover transitions. That's the whole point, because circus started off as horse displays, and you know, there needed to be times to clean the ring, there needed to be times to roll out carpeting so they could actually do a straight act. And so kind of circus clowning the way we know it kind of started in France roughly around the time of Napoleon, and it was comic dialogues between the ringmaster and kind of like a country bumpkin in the audience. You know, so kind of like a goof in the audience, who eventually became kind of a drunk in the audience, which is where the red nose came from.
Oh, okay.
But they were used as transition. All right, keep the show going, and then if there was an accident, if there's something need to be fixed, clown would run out there and kind of just keep everybody laughing until it was done. Well, a couple of things happened. In Europe, the clown took on an art and status of its own. So now clown acts in Europe can go on 20, 30 minutes. Okay. Like the entire second half is called the clown entree, and that's where the headlining duo or the headlining trio goes out there, and they don't leave until they're done.
Wow. Is that like an opener, or is that the main act?
They would, like clown entrees in Europe, especially if you've got like some of the legendary clowns that are performing now, like David Larible and Pipo Sussman Jr. and the Francescos and all that type of thing. They will be out. They are the headliner. They are the reason you've come. You know, and the thing is that those clowns will be doing the same act for like 11, 12, 13, 15 years, almost their entire career, because people want to see them do that one routine, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but in America, you know, because the circus was so big, yes, they were used as filler when the circus got larger and larger. You know, you can't see the act in the ring. Well, I got some clowns right in front of me, you know? And then at the same time, when everyone started, you know, figuring out what does the circus mean metaphorically and what does it mean in terms of like lessons that people can take from the audience, the clown became the personal contact. He became the audience liaison between the circus world and the outside world.
Ah, okay.
So kind of like, you know how Oliver Hardy would look straight into the camera?
Yeah.
And like you would sit there and go, I empathize with you now.
Mm-hmm.
The clown was very much the same way, is that if somebody's, you know, dangling from their hair, or somebody's in a, you know, somebody's like displaying an elephant or some other kind of exotic animal, or somebody's doing some incredible juggling or acrobatics, the clown will literally just sit there on the ring curb and go.
What about the clown in Shakespeare? Because in Shakespeare, there's a lot of clowns. Is that a similar thing?
The clown in Shakespeare, that came down to the variations on a theme.
Mm-hmm.
So Shakespeare wrote in tracks. So he would have his main storyline,
mm-hmm.
and then he would have an exalted version of that storyline that usually took place, especially in the comedies, usually took place amongst the royalty, or it usually took place among, you know, for example, the best example of it is in Midsummer Night's Dream. You have the very distinct tracks. It's the same story,
mm-hmm.
but you have the plot between Oberon and what's Oberon's wife?
Titania.
You have Oberon and Titania. That's the exalted storyline.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the lovers,
mm-hmm.
Helen and Helena and Demetrius and all them.
Yeah.
That's the middle storyline. And then you've got the comic, you've got the parody,
yeah.
which is the rude mechanicals
yeah.
getting their play together.
Yeah.
And that kind of came out of Commedia dell'arte a little bit, in the sense of that you have the three different storylines going on. You know, one what was it? One romantic, one dramatic, and one comic or one grotesque, you know.
And also a lot of times in Shakespeare, the clown is like the smartest person on the stage, like in Lear.
Yes, he's the only one. Okay, so this is the cool thing. So when I was doing all my clown research,
mm-hmm.
that when it came to any time in the 20th century that theater wanted to mix things up,
mm-hmm.
they turned to clowning traditions. Because the thing about a clown character in terms of legitimate theater
mm-hmm.
is that a clown, regardless of what's going on in the play,
mm-hmm.
chooses to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows him to step out of the action.
Choice. Yeah, right.
And talk directly to the audience.
Yeah.
And then step right back in again.
I see, yeah.
And so the thing is that we then, as the audience, can see can be in on the joke if the clown is acting a different way in the play than he is outside of the play. You know, and then of course he can just like literally throw looks to us and in other words, it's that personal connection. Clown, that's why, as opposed to an actor that demands the attention to himself, clowns are looking out at you saying, come here. I've got something I want to share with you, and it's going to be awesome, you know?
Okay, now I want to jump to the present day clown situation. There's a couple of things going on here. One of the things is if you Google clown, you get all kinds of horrifying clowns with big scary teeth, and then there's the It clown and all that stuff. What is the effect that's had on clowning today?
Well, there's a lot of clowns that try to like push that away.
Yeah.
The thing is that a couple of things. First of all, you got to understand what it is, and you don't expect it's a character, it's a thing, it's an icon. The evil clown has now become an icon, and I know a lot of clowns who take take different aspects of evil clowning and put it in it, because to throw a little history lesson in there, and I'll make this quick.
Yeah.
The mime Devereaux, who was huge in the funambulal theater during the reign of Napoleon in France, was an incredible celebrity, and he developed the character of Pierrot. That's why the French love Pierrot so much. The white, with the white face and the black cap, and he's always crying, and he's always like the melancholy clown.
Yeah.
So Devereaux took this character and made it a fully fleshed being, capable of high comedy and at the same time cruelty, and at the same time, he was human. He had human appetites. So he allowed multiple sides to come out of this comic character, and gave it a tremendous amount of dimension. And so, I know a lot of clowns who kind of understand and embrace the evil clown simply because it's a thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to get people to stop, because it's just far too popular.
Yeah.
And
knock that off. That's what I'm trying to do. Tell them to knock it off. It's not working.
People would come up to you, and I can tell someone who's got a legitimate fear of clowns and who doesn't.
Okay. Yeah. So you run across that as a clown, where the people are like, ah.
Right. I mean, you could tell who's really scared of you and who's not, and who's just doing it to bust your chops, or because they don't want to be bothered. And so the best thing about that, and the best thing about a lot of the way you tell that the power that you have as a clown, is that you can choose to perform for them or not. So if they're scared of you, you're like, great, go away.
Go away. Well, you have to kind of gauge your audience, just like you're saying. You always have to be involved with how your audience. When I was Bugs Bunny at Magic Mountain, and some kids, you get close to them and they start to cry, but if you back up like maybe 2 steps, they're happy again. It's just you've just gotten so giant.
Well,
they can't
and I will say this, is that a lot of it too, because I do hospital clowning. I'm a clown doctor at a number of hospitals here in New York. And one of the things we've started doing is, when the child life staff goes into, oh, there I am. Hello, that's Doctor You Don't Say. So when we're about to go into a room, whether it's virtually or in person, a child life person will ask the patient if they want to visit. And we used to say, would you like a visit from the clown doctors? And people would say yes. Lately, we've been really specific with our language, and they say, would you like some funny friends of mine to come in? Because to say you want to visit from the clowns now evokes all this lunacy. And I will say, from the parents' point of view, like within the past 10 or so years, I've been hearing a lot of vocabulary of saying to their children, are you scared of that? Why are you scared of that? Don't have to be scared. Like, they're using things like scared. They're using things like gonna get you. It's how they're putting the actual vocabulary of fear in their children.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, we, obviously we make definitions for things and we teach our kids these things. That's why I was thinking the scary clown thing might be really bad for clowns, because it might be generations of people that identify clowns with being scary rather than with being fun. That's very true. You're absolutely right. It's like a training.
So we have to, that's why clowning had to evolve. That's why a lot of the makeups got toned down. I was a white-faced clown when I was on Ringling Brothers for 3 years.
You've got white all over your face, and I've got a picture of that because it's a great clown. This is your college clown. So you had a particular character, and this was your character most of the time in Ringling Brothers?
Yes. It was I was supposed to kind of look a little bit like Beethoven because I played a lot of musical instruments.
I love that clown.
But the thing about my clown was that I had an attitude. I was pissy.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when you're dealing with the audience at Ringling Brothers, the person I was performing for wasn't the children. I was performing for the parents. who had to park their car, wrangle their kids through all the concessions, find their seat, just that going to the circus was just a trial.
Yeah.
And so my point to them was, meet somebody who's a little more ticked off than you are for where he is. And it allowed great interaction. It allowed me to, and the thing is that all that white, you have to fight through it.
Because it's hard to get your expression out through that white face because it doesn't have much.
Because it heightens your expression so much.
Oh, I see.
And at the same time, if you're not careful, it appears to be a mask. And people who have a fear of clowns are the same as people who have a fear for mannequins, who people have a fear of masks. That in other words, it's like you can't register their true facial expression. So they don't know if you're going to be a friend or foe. They get confused. They get scared. They don't want to deal with you.
Well, one of the things that I liked about, Bill Irwin and David Shiner, their clown shows, largely New York, Full Moon and all that, was that one of them was sort of mischievous in general. And the other one was sort of like friendly. And the two of them would kind of play off each other in that way. Do you, when you do your shows, do you find like archetypes like that?
Well, the way they control their audience is David Shiner is leading while Bill Irwin encourages everyone to follow.
Yeah. Oh,
so they've got one in front and one in back, and you just sit in the middle and you're carried along with the ride.
Okay. Yeah.
The thing that in all of my clown shows, whether I do them in a theater, whether I do them in the circus, whether I do them in somebody's living room. And let me tell you, doing a clown show for a child's birthday party on the Upper West Side will pay your rent.
Yeah, right. I'm sure.
But the thing is that the one thing that I constantly reiterate is it's like, I'm not here with you. You're here with me. And so it's that whole idea of, you're going to outsmart me. You're going to best me. I'm going to get annoyed. Children are always smarter than I am. Adults are always giving me attitude,
Yeah, I'm sure.
But the thing is that it's just this constant personal back and forth, and that's why I say it's far much more like being a stand-up or being an improviser than being an actor. Because none of my shows are written down. I literally show up with an old suitcase full of stuff. I literally say, okay, I'm here. I kick it open. It's like, all right, what are we going to do first? And literally they'll tell me what they want, by how they are or how they're acting,
So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because we as performers, as stand-ups and as clowns and as actors, we're often put in situations where we don't feel like we're getting the respect that perhaps we require. All of a sudden you'll find yourself changing in a broom closet, or like some mother is telling you you're not funny enough or whatever it is. How do you deal with that how do you keep your ego when you've chosen a profession that often can be kind of hard on it, I would imagine?
Well, the thing is that the best lesson I learned was ultimately from Ringling Brothers. And the thing is that when you were cranking out, at the worst 16 shows a week.
Yeah.
And you'd be playing to arenas full of people. And you literally, as a performer, wanted that individual reaction. So when I was on Ringling Brothers, I would say to myself, I'm going to perform for one person. I'm going to find that person in the crowd, and I'm going to perform just for them.
Yeah.
And anytime however they enjoy the show, that's what I'm going to take away with.
Yeah.
Now, what happened in Ringling is that as you're focused entirely on one person, there's a very tangible energy there, and other people start watching.
Do you actually pick out a person, or do you just imagine a person? You pick out a person. I'm performing with that person.
With eye contact. You know, you meet them before you try to meet them before you try to pick them out before the show starts. And then as the show goes, every time you go out, you're looking for them and you're always giving them that direct eye contact. Like, hey,
That's so
how are you
great.
doing? Look at me now. I'm a stilt palm tree, you know?
I'm
And
going to try that with my stand-up.
yeah, there you
For
go.
one
Just go for one person. Because the thing is that all the focus and all the attention you give that one person, people inevitably will pay attention to that. We'll want to know what's going on.
Will that one
And
person
then-
be like, why does he keep looking at me?
Well, but you want that person. It's got to be a person who will appreciate
handle
it.
it.
You don't want,
Yeah.
you don't pick the person who ducks under the seat every time you go looking for them.
They're like, that's my clown out there.
Yeah, and the thing is that you can develop these really wonderful. How many times did the police come? Oh, look, so far in New York, the police have only come to events that I've been at 4 times.
That's it.
And it had nothing to do with me. But anyway, it's that thing. It's like, stand-ups will call out people in the audience, like a great laugh.
Yeah.
You hone in on it.
Right.
Or somebody who's down in front who whether it's, these are the people that you're hanging on to hope that everyone else is going to latch onto to take the whole audience along. And so being a clown is the exact same thing. So even if I'm sitting there performing for, 10 5-year-olds at somebody's birthday party, or if I'm in a 1,500 seat theater, on Broadway,
no less.
That it's ultimately very much the same. And I specifically look for that thing that I walk away and I say, all right, that was a good night.
That's great. Now, do you ever get, I wanted to get to this one thing, but do you ever get thoughts in your head like that are bad for your own performance? Do you ever get like doubts? Like, what am I doing being a clown? I'm just a clown. Or, you know what I mean? Or do you ever battle anything internally that way as an artist?
Oh gosh, yes. Especially when you don't feel funny.
Yes. That's what I talk about that too. When I do stand-up, a lot of times before you do stand-up, you don't feel funny.
Yeah. No. And I'll say this is I found myself, especially when I first started performing in Germany, is that the first week I was there, I just bombed. Oh God, I bombed. Really? And then there was a time I was touring with a comedy group called the Cambridge Footlights in England, and I was their token American. I was bombing.
Oh, no.
And I'm talking like dead silence, crickets, lights go off.
Yeah.
The show has come to a screeching halt.
Uh-huh.
And so what I would do there is when I had those particular doubts, I would sit there and not only would I just pick everybody's brain as to, like, for example, there was an aspect of Germany. It's like, I don't particularly find it funny, but the Germans seem to like it. So I'm gonna go in this direction. Yeah. And you know what I mean? So it's like you really kind of find culturally how to connect. And the thing is like when I was in England, I found that being an American was funnier to them than trying to emulate English humor.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then like, for example, in Germany, because the Germans really pride themselves on their ability to speak English.
Yeah.
I would purposefully trip that up by talking too fast, by talking too slow, by being kind of, in some instances, the ugly American and how you deal with people who don't speak English.
Yeah.
And so in other words, they were able to kind of embrace me as that kind of archetype. And, because like, as a stand-up, it's like, what's the hook? Yeah. What hooks you into the people that you're performing for?
Well, you also, as a stand-up, have to have kind of a persona, a stage persona that's perhaps even different from your life persona. Like maybe you're a little bit more you, or maybe you're a completely different kind of person, depending on who you are and what you're doing. But you kind of hone that. And you also you have to kind of adjust it to your audience too. Like here in Los Angeles, you can do jokes about being an actor and people will like totally get into it. And you do jokes about being an actor outside the state and people are like, they just can't even connect with it. They don't even, you're like, wait a minute, you're not an actor. What show are you on? You know what I mean?
Where's your Trump material?
Yeah, right. So you have to kind of
Well,
adjust
yeah, and
to
if
your
you
audience.
see,
And sometimes you have
if
to do it in the middle of it.
yeah, yeah, if you see my progression of being a clown
Yeah.
from when I started in clown college
Yeah.
to now,
Yeah.
it's like even when I was doing the stuff in Chicago, it's basically me, only bigger.
Yeah. That's what I
You
always say
know,
that too.
and
It's a
so
slightly enhanced version of myself.
yeah, it's slightly more energized
Yeah.
version of that. And you know, and once again, I'll go back to Del Close, because Del Close said anytime you play a character in improv, you got 3 levels. You got yourself, you got the heightened version of yourself, and then you got the character you're playing. So at any moment you can go to any one of those 3 levels. And as a clown, I do that constantly.
Wow.
You
That's
know.
cool. So when you turned 50, you had some kind of an epiphany or some kind of a change about your life. And I want to get to that. This will be the way we're going to end this interview.
Oh, great.
We'll have a dance break afterwards.
Joel's slow descent to the grave. That's how we'll end the interview. It's all down the hill from here. Look, I'm practicing.
Yeah. Practicing death. Clown College GPA. What was your GPA at Clown College? That was one
What
of the
was my
questions.
GPA? I got a 5.0 on a 4-point scale.
Wow. That's impressive. That's super impressive.
Yeah,
I know
thank you.
I did want to put this thing on here, and I think this is why you got that, is that you could stand on a ball like that.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah,
how
that's me. The first year I was with the Big Apple Circus.
Wow. That was cool.
And the first job they had me do when they hired me is I met with the director, and he sat down. He said, I want you to write down on a piece of paper everything you know how to do. And so what eventually that turned into was me coming out on the ball playing the saxophone.
Whoa.
And then when I went around the ring playing the saxophone, and then I had to introduce the comedy bicycle act. But literally, they had me do everything I knew how to do that year. Everything, you know, whatever acrobatics I knew, whatever juggling I knew, the musical instruments I played. I was, even though I'm a kind of like a sideshow barker here, they don't have a ringmaster at Big Apple Circus. They have kind of more of a host.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, I was the straight man to the 2 clowns. So we kind of were like a clown trio in that way.
Yeah.
So when they would get too carried away, I would ultimately come in and so they were actually using my comedy chops and my improv chops. I mean, we were hooking each other up on winches and flying through the air.
When you made that list, it probably didn't take very long.
No, it didn't. In fact, I still have the note card that I wrote it on.
In large print. Saxophone, can walk on a ball.
Can walk on the ball. Well, and on a ball came later. It's just saxophone and walk.
Well, get him a ball. I don't know. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, and even saxophone, I didn't parentheses, not that strong.
I want to say thank you to my relatives out there for wishing me a happy birthday. Okay, now I want to hear, speaking of birthdays, I want to hear what happened when you turned 50 and your life changed. I really built this up.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Well, you told me on the phone last night. You know, I had an epiphany. I was like, save it for the show.
Because as a clown, when you turn 50, that's when you literally take on your master status.
Oh, okay.
And if
hear that, everybody?
Yeah. So if you stick around, if you stick with being a clown until you're 50, you become a master.
Yeah.
And you know, there are official notifications that tell you that you're a master clown. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, yes. If you're in your 50s and you're still doing it, everyone's like, okay, that guy's a master. And the thing is that it's like, what is your big contribution?
Yeah.
Now, because the thing is that some people are like, oh, well, I'm really good at putting shows together. Or I'm a great gag writer, or I've got an unforgettable character, or I've got this one act that I've honed my entire career. And I had to stop and really sit down and think and say, what have I been contributing and what am I going to be known for? Mm-hmm. And The interesting thing is that I had a realization is that for most of my career, because when I came to New York off the circus and you start working and getting involved in the different groups and things like that, I fell into the straight man role.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you can tell, I kind of very easily fall into that kind of knitted brow. I look like Mel Cooley from the Dick Van Dyke Show. It's that perpetual,
and also it's great, works great for you because you put on a suit and you look like the authoritarian at some, low-level office, some middle management guy.
I look like the assistant vice principal of a Midwestern middle school.
Totally.
And, so when I fell into that, a lot of that was creating material in relation to somebody else. So I was always writing and creating for other people.
Yeah.
And not really writing and creating for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
like
I had to sit down
person on Broadway or in Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah. Or like, for example, it's like when you become a comedy writer.
Yeah.
You are attached to whether you're attached to a comedian or whether you're attached to a show. You got to learn the rules of that comedian and that show in order to know how to write for them. And I was the same way, except I had rules for everybody except myself. So I really went and started breaking down what is it that I found funny? What is it that I did? If I was just told to go out on stage for 5 minutes, what was my immediate go-to? Was it an aggressive character? Was it a sympathetic character? What kind? Was it broad humor? Was it subtle humor? And so I kind of created a solo show about it. And if you start at 50, does that automatically make you a master?
Sadly, no.
Yes.
Oh, yes. We have two divergent answers.
But yes.
Yes.
But as long as you got enough money to pay people to
listen
teach
to you,
you're a master. So, and I found my humor, my real humor, my personal humor, is very dry.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain obviousness about it. But at the same time, it's not really, you got to think, there's a little bit of thinking involved. It's because what really jazzed me all about comedy all these years was when you do improv, and you probably know this too as a stand-up. Mm-hmm. Yes, you are, Kevin Sherman.
Yes, Kevin,
you're
a master.
I bow to the sensei. Yes.
Kevin is a master at being Kevin Sherman.
Yes, he is. He's the master of himself.
That's for sure.
But it's that when you get the audience's brains working by leaving space, in improv, they always said, don't work so hard because the audience is doing half the work for you. Mm-hmm. Because they're involved. And as a stand-up, when you get involved, you can sit there and throw out a non sequitur and you'll get a big laugh out of that non sequitur because in that moment, they're working right along with you.
Yeah.
And that was the relationship that I wanted to cultivate every single time I got in front of an audience. Mm-hmm. And so I tried to figure out how to do it on video. I tried to figure out how to do it live. I tried to figure out how to do it writing wise. And so I've kind of, George Carlin talks about how his voice evolved over the course of his stand-up career. Mm-hmm. That for me, what's very relevant now is kind of that mundane, powerless attitude, that powerless position that people find themselves in. Mm-hmm. And, for example, the character I'm working on now, which I call Mr. Joel, which is basically me, has a very almost Keaton-esque way of just accepting what happens in the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is not above walking headlong into a lamppost.
We'll show that later.
I made a short film called Mr. Joel walks into a lamppost.
Yeah.
And that's all that happens. He walks into a lamppost. And he just accepts it.
I have a clip from that here, if I can find it. Oh, here we go. I am going to show us you walking into a lamppost. Here we go. Let me just cue it up here. Oh, I hear the music. All right, let's get in there.
There we go.
Let's watch you walk into a lamppost.
Walk into a lamppost. Okay.
This is Joel's YouTube channel.
Yes, please subscribe.
Please subscribe. Damn it. There's the lamppost. It said lamppost. Ow. That's beautiful. I love it. I just want to see. This is another one of my favorites. This one is, well, it'll tell you what the title is,
Yeah.
I think. Dead or Napping. This is kind of a dark one. Yes. I'm just going to play this thing.
It's short.
Napping. That's good. I'm there. I don't know about that one. That looks like, oh, shoot. Looks like it might not be napping. Oh, I totally went out of it. That one seems dead, maybe. That's what I'm thinking, but we'll find out.
Yeah. Well,
This
that's
is totally
the thing.
face dancing. This is definitely along the lines of face dancing. Motorcycle. Definitely
That was
napping.
during COVID. I had to wipe the
Oh, really?
floor.
That'll be the one last one that I'll show is the mask one. Here's another one. Dead or napping.
And that, I believe, happens to be dead.
Oh, this one's good too, but since we don't have that much time left here. Well, in fact, we have no time.
Well,
at
you
this
know, I'll
point.
just encourage everybody.
Yeah.
All my little movies are less than a minute long.
Yeah, go check out his thing
Go
here.
check them out.
And subscribe,
Like
Hummingbirds.
chocolate, you can't eat this one.
I just want to show your dogs then. Are these your dogs?
Yes.
These are great, because we love animals here. Dead.
I just wanted to make a movie with them that had no point.
Yeah, I love it. They're like cute dogs. But there's a lot going on in this movie.
Yeah, well, because I've got basically a handful of cooked chicken that I am tempting them with
That's why they're so
behind the
interested.
camera. That's why they're so alert.
Oh yeah. Oh, I see a hand a little bit.
It's all food motivation.
That's all animals are motivated by, I think. I love it. Okay, yeah. Check out Joel's YouTube channel. Go over there and subscribe, please. Hit the little bell so you get
Yes,
notified
and
when you get a
you're
new one.
trying to get 1,000. I'm just trying to get 100.
Okay, we're gonna get him up to 100. You know what
I
they
would
say
very
about
much
working
like
with kids and animals?
100.
100. He would like 100. Let's get
Yes,
it.
that's all. I'm not
We can
shooting
make
to the
that
moon.
happen. We can make that happen.
Awesome.
All right, so
Awesome.
we're going into our dance party. Now you're in a little box, and we're back with. That's the way we are these days. We're all in little boxes, except for Georgie. He's just out there in the snow
He's
having
just,
a good old
he's
time.
just chilling.
All right, so this is finally the dance party, dance break that we're going to get to, and I found a band in Delhi playing the Rolling Stones' "Give Me Shelter." Thank you, Joel, for being on the show. Thank you for being so
Thank you.
gracious. I'm glad that your internet hung up or didn't hang up. It started to for a second. And I was like, oh no.
Well, there's a lot of hacking going on in my neighborhood.
Oh my God. And also, can you just tell us, you have a theater company?
So on Facebook, I got a COVID sketch group called Elevator Pitch. Check that out. I got a theater company called Parallel Exit that we're do like physical comedy. Check out my YouTube channel, Joel Jeske. And also check out the hospital clowning organization I belong to, which is called Healthy Humor.
Okay, Healthy Humor.
There you go. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel.
That's our big goal, is to get them 100. Get 100.
Awesome.
We do that. All right, so everybody, and if you haven't subscribed here to Lunch Therapy, the little hummingbird is down below. Just hover over it and subscribe. Trish King is going to subscribe to Joel Jeske's YouTube channel. Kamala's subscribing.
Shout out to Trish. Thank you.
Matt Wright is subscribing. Ganell. So we'll get this thing going. All right, so here we go. Deli Jam. Thanks, Joel. This is just a little part where we dance to some tunes and then we go out. All right. Here we go. Deli Jam. So these are some people in India, I believe, in Delhi, playing some Rolling Stones. I'm going to crank it a little bit here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the show today.